It's the Hoffman Show. Cranking Miley Cyrus. Anthony, that was... I'm like, was that just my headphones, or was that song really just loud?
I think it was your headphones.
Oh, it might actually be the headphones. Turn that down a little bit over here. Okay. All right. Here we go on a Friday with Miley. Look, Miley can sing, and Miley can belt, but that was, I think, just a volume issue and in the cans, as they say in the radio. But man, I am 1,000 years old. Nobody calls them cans anymore. Clinton Yates would be fond of that. He'll come back to the show eventually. It's a Friday. Things are loose. We're excited to talk some football with you here on the Team 980. And let's dive into the Commanders-Falcons matchup here. And coming up next at 4:15, I'm actually very excited for this. Anthony has, all by himself, no help from the NFL or any other media outlet, he has personally compiled every single playoff scenario for the Commanders. So we're going to give you a Commanders viewer guide for your weekend, because it's not just about the Commanders, and obviously like the simplest thing to know is if the Commanders win against the Falcons, they are in. Game over. Hooray. Love that. Excellent. Playoffs. 11 wins. Everything that goes with it. But one, by the time the game kicks off, the Commanders might already be in the playoffs. And two, they are not stuck in the 7th seed. There is a real chance that they wind up as the 6th seed. So how could that happen? Because if you're the 6th seed, you're probably going to LA to play the Rams. If not, you're going to Seattle to play the Seahawks, which would be a very weird bit of history. I mean, frankly, there's historical crossovers in both of those because of the McVay connection in LA. But either way, you have the history with RG3 and I think it was 2005. Also, the Commanders/Washington played in Seattle. So you got those situations all on the table. Sorry, as I get distracted here, because Anthony also just gave me the injury report. Anthony, you're just a machine today. You got playoff scenarios, you got injury reports. Man, there is a lot of dudes out this weekend. Holy cow. This game against the Falcons just got a lot harder. So this is real-time reaction. Breaking news. Here's the Commanders' injury report for the weekend. Out. Marshawn Lattimore. That one, I think, was kind of expected as we rolled throughout the week. De'Ami Brown. That hurts. Hello, KJ Osborne. Welcome to the offense. Andrew Wiley. Cornelius Lucas. Welcome back to the offense. I will say, while I think that Wiley has played just fine, the last time that the Commanders' offensive line was kind of ticked off, had a defensive line that they could attack, and Cornelius Lucas was playing right tackle, they rushed for 250 yards. Jordan McGee is out. He's been playing a little bit more as of late. And then this one stinks too. Tyler Owens, who was awesome on teams last week, he is out as well. John Allen is questionable. Marcus Mariota is questionable as well. Anthony, do you have an injury on Mariota? Is he sick, or did he get hurt during the week?
More so personal.
Oh, okay. So whatever's going on there. Hopefully that's a good personal. Sometimes, if a guy's wife is pregnant and they're expecting or whatever, but who knows? So hopefully Marcus, everything's okay with him and his family, and he's able to be, sitting there, very much sitting there next to Jayden on the iPad on Sunday. We don't need him to play. I would love for him to be able to play in Week 18, but that would also depend on some of the playoff scenarios that we're going to give you here in just a few minutes. So the big one there, I would say the two biggest there are Lattimore and De'Ami, with all due respect to Andrew Wiley, who is, again, playing decent enough ball, but Cornelius Lucas is a fine backup. And Anthony, the pass rush for the Atlanta Falcons isn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Good. Bad. It's one of the bottom 5 in football, which it has been for every year of this decade. That's not a made-up stat. That's a real, actual stat. They have been bottom 5 in pass rush win rate and sacks for every year since basically 2020.
That's actually really sad because they have some notable names up there. You got the Grady Jarrett. They got paid a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
trade for Judon.
Grady's Jarrett's still a good player. He's just not as explosive as he was. 2018, Grady Jarrett was a problem. 2024 Grady Jarrett is 6 years older than 2018 Grady Jarrett. So there. Matthew Judon's had some good years. And, like, Judon had a pick 6 last week, so that's nice. But, like, from a pass rush standpoint, it's actually, let me pull up the stat real quick as I continue talking here. But, I mean, the Lattimore thing really sucks because, one, you gave up all this draft capital for him, and now he's played 2 games, or a game in 3 quarters. He missed the 4th quarter basically last week. And Juice and Michael Davis, earlier in the day, Quinn kind of hinted this might be coming, and he said that if Lattimore can't go, and they hadn't ruled him out at the time, but if he can't go, then it'll be Juice and Michael Davis, going back to kind of the rotation they had before Lattimore came back. And I'm like, they can play winning football with that. They can play well. But I will say Drake London specifically would have been really nice for Lattimore to be here for, because he is a premier receiver. He's super physical. And I'm not scared that he's going to get over the top necessarily on Juice or on Davis, both of whom are not the fleetest of foot. But I am concerned for both of them, but especially for St. Juice. Like, London is mega physical, dude. Like, I love watching Drake London play. He is so physical on routes. He's super physical at the catch point. You have to be able to, like, really have great, strong hands. And if you make a mistake at the line of scrimmage trying to get physical with him, you're going to wind up holding him. And I'm terrified that the Falcons are going to get 3 penalties on first down or on key spots because they're going to go after St. Juice and Benjamin's going to commit penalties. Like, he'll be fine most downs, but you got to be good in the big spot. So, Anthony, we have to hope that our theory that Benjamin's anti-clutch gene got solved by recovering the game-sealing fumble last week on the final kickoff. We have to hope that our theory will get put to the test this weekend.
We got to hope and pray, but I will remind everybody, Benjamin St. Juice did get an interception against the Falcons last time he played them.
That's
Granted,
true.
It was given to. Well, I'm not gonna say it was given to him.
Oh no, it was given.
He still had to catch the ball.
That's true. It was
the
the opportunity was gifted to him. He didn't have to make a play on the ball, but he did catch it. That is still, as far as I know, unless I'm forgetting one, the only interception of his career.
I think so.
College or pro. Not ideal. The Falcons defense has generated a 29.2% pressure rate this season, the 3rd lowest in the NFL, and the 3rd time in the past 4 seasons that the Falcons have ranked in the bottom 3 for pressure rate. They were 32nd in 21, 30th in 22. They got out of the bottom 3 last year only to return. They've also sacked opposing quarterbacks on just 4.6% of dropbacks in 2024, the lowest rate in the league. This would also mark the 3rd time in 4 seasons that the Falcons have recorded the lowest sack rate in the NFL. Dude, in 2021, their sack rate was 2.9%. 2.9. They are the worst rate in the league this year at 4.6. And then in 2022, they were 3.5%. So that's pretty pathetic.
Yeah, it's pretty bad if you ask me.
Yeah. So Jayden should have some time. And the thing is, you see it on tape. They don't get pressure very often. When they do, they don't finish the sacks. Like, they actually not only have a bad pressure ratio, they have a bad pressure to sack ratio, aka when they get pressure, they don't finish. So Jayden might have some opportunities to extend plays, and you watch guys like Bo Nix extend plays against them and find guys down the field. So Jayden could have a big scrambling day. He could also have a big, like, on the run making throws day. I'm excited to see that part. Yeah, that will not happen to De'Ami Brown, and I will tell you right now, Anthony Haney, that is going to affect my number 1 player that I'm going to throw into the pick 6. I'm making a bold proclamation when we get to the pick 6 coming up at 6 o'clock. I probably shouldn't do this guy first, but I'm going to do it anyway. Why? Because I can. When we get back, the rooting guide for the weekend, if you will. If you are watching the other games awaiting Sunday Night Football this weekend, who should you be rooting for the best possible scenario for the Commanders? We'll give you all the scenarios next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, and we are always live as well on the free Odyssey app.
Sunday.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. And we have for you a guide for your weekend. What we have for you is a guide to all of the playoff scenarios that affect the Commanders and kind of a guide throughout the day as we all wait for Sunday night. That's what Carrie Underwood told me, Anthony. Everyone's waiting all day for Sunday night. I don't know if you've heard that before.
Sunday night.
Yeah, that's correct. That is very good, Anthony. I'm glad that you followed along there. Excellent work out of you. Okay, so here's what we got. We have the Commanders keeping an eye first on Bucks-Panthers. Bucks-Panthers, which, by the way, the Falcons also have a very keen eye on, because the Falcons, with a Bucks loss, I believe, clinched the NFC South. I believe that going into the final weekend, the Falcons have the tiebreaker over Tampa, which they do.
Yeah,
They swept them. So head-to-head, you get that. That's always the first tiebreaker. And that would thus eliminate the Bucks from actually, no, I shouldn't say it eliminates the Bucks from the playoffs, because if Atlanta then wins and Washington loses in Week 18 and Tampa wins in Week 18, I think that could be a situation where, actually, no, I think the Bucks have to win out and the Washington has to lose out. And then the Bucks and Commanders would be tied. And then because Tampa beat Washington in Week 1, all the way back then, it still counts, and Tampa would win the tiebreaker over Washington. But that would involve Washington losing out, Tampa winning out. But if the Bucks lose or tie, the Commanders clinch a playoff spot. So, again, by the time Bucks-Panthers ends, go Bryce Young, first team. And actually, Anthony, I'm extra qualified for this, because I grew up in the Carolinas rooting for the Carolina Panthers. Now, I'm just an objective journalist. Now, I have no rooting interest at all. And to the extent that I have rooting interest, it's for the Commanders, because, well, it's way more fun when they win to do my job, and I'm self-interested in that way. But if I need to dip back into my roots here, Anthony, repeat after me. Nothing could be finer.
Nothing could be finer
than to be in Carolina.
For a Panthers football game. Baby.
Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina for a Panthers football game. It's the fight song down there.
Hey. I think that will be the first and last time I ever do that.
I mean, don't say last. It could happen again next year.
Uh-oh.
You never know. I mean, here's what we do know. Bryce Young, keep doing your thing. The good thing, not the bad thing. And you beat Baker Mayfield and the Bucks, who, by the way, just lost on Sunday Night Football to the Cowboys, who, by the way, their defense has been a mess since Antoine Winfield went out. They can't stop anything. The Commanders win. They're in the playoffs. Or the Commanders don't even have to win. They're in the playoffs. Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina. Okay, people get it. 425. There's only 2 games at 425, by the way, this week. The Cowboys-Eagles got flexed out. Vikings-Packers got flexed in. Packers lose. Then the Commanders are in control of the 6th seed. With the 6th seed, the Commanders would be set to play the 3rd-seeded Los Angeles Rams, assuming that the Rams do their what they need to do and close out and win the NFC West. So that would mean, instead of either Philadelphia, Detroit, or Minnesota in the first round, likely at this point Philadelphia, because Detroit and Minnesota are tied with a 1-game lead over the Eagles for the 2 seed. So instead of a third matchup against the Eagles in Philadelphia on Wild Card Weekend, that would mean a trip to Los Angeles instead. Homecoming for Jayden Daniels against a much more hit-or-miss team. One that you're unfamiliar with, but the Rams, anything can happen on any given weekend. So that's what's at stake there. And again, you want the Packers to lose. Also, for entertainment purposes, if the Vikings win and the Lions win, it is Vikings-Lions Week 18 for the 1 seed. So for good football purposes, just for pure interest level, hey, can we get more meaningful games in Week 18 when a lot of the playoffs will have already been decided? And the only thing up for grabs is seeding. Let's get one more interesting game on the schedule. Anthony, cheering guide, ready? Hands out, wide. Now you're going to bring it? No. Like wide. I know you can't really see my hands. Yeah, no, like full wingspan. Pretend like, remember that Michael Jordan poster that was in Barcelona? Yeah, we need like that kind of wingspan. And then you're going to bring your hands over your head together and clap. And when you do that, you're going to go, skull. Yeah, that's skull. And it gets faster. Skull. Yeah, that's what we're gonna be doing all 425. Yeah, that was a lot out of you. Anthony really got into that there for those that's on the radio. He lost control of his face.
Yes, sir.
I can't wait to show you that video back later. You looked like an absolute maniac.
I did look crazy.
Yeah, you definitely did. So that is what we're doing. 425 on Sunday. Your cheeseheads, put them away. Let's go Vikings on the road at Lambeau. And then the Commanders are in control. Of course, that means they need to win Sunday night against Atlanta, and they need to win in Week 18 against the Cowboys, the now CD Lamb-less Cowboys. But that they are in control of that. They win. They'd end the season, by the way, on a 5-game winning streak. And then they would be the 6th seed and go to LA to see Sean and the Rams. As for the number 2 seed and the NFC East, by the way, the Commanders are looking for a Cowboys win over the Eagles. And I know this feels far-fetched because it's going to take Washington winning out and the Eagles losing out. But if that happens, and this weekend is 100% on the table. I know CeeDee Lamb is not playing for Dallas, but Cooper Rush has been playing decent the last couple weeks, and I'm telling you right now, the Cowboys' defense is legitimately scary right now. Micah Parsons, over the last month or so of the season, has played like arguably the best player in the NFL. He has been he's pissed that they're not in the playoffs, and angry, pissed off Micah Parsons is apparently a monster. So since he got back, their pass rush is like playing at a super elite level, and it's very much looking like Kenny Pickett is going to start in Week 17 against Micah Parsons and this Dallas defense. And again, Saquon could have a day. If I was Kellen Moore, I would just hand the ball off to Saquon 30 times. I would minimize the amount that Kenny Pickett's doing. I would hope that my defense can cause a turnover or two against Cooper Rush and a pretty toothless Cowboys offense. But we'll see. But if that happens, still don't get your hopes up because the Eagles have the Giants in Week 18.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, man. It seems so far-fetched, but then you got to keep in mind the Giants really, really stink.
They're so terrible. Absolutely god-awful. And I don't really see how they lose the Eagles in Week 18. But then again, they fell apart at the end of last year. And, like, Sirianni's kind of a hothead. You saw him, whatever happened with Zach Ertz after the game. Like, it was just something with this team. And so I tend to think that the Commanders probably are in too big of a hole. I doubt that they're going to wind up winning this game. I doubt they're going to wind up winning this division. But if they did, they would leapfrog all the way up to the 2 seed. And they would host a playoff game against
somebody in the NFC West.
No. The Eagles. Wouldn't it be?
No, the Eagles won't be a 7 seed.
If the Eagles if the Eagles lose out.
They have 5 losses, so they'll be...
Which is where the Commanders are right now in the 7 seed.
Oh, we do have...
So there is a chance that the Eagles and the Commanders would flip places. Now, there's also a chance, depending on what happens with Green Bay and all the other scenarios we just said, that it could wind up being the Packers as the 7 seed, and the Eagles would leapfrog them. But if the Commanders wind up winning the division, The Eagles have already clinched a playoff spot. They just haven't clinched the division. So the 7 teams would be the 3 NFC North teams, the Eagles, the Commanders, and then the other 2 division winners. So be your South and your West winners. So
man,
that's how wacky that would be. Can you imagine if
we're
rematch in Landover, wild card weekend, Eagles Commanders Part 3, except for the Commanders are hosting it?
Oh, I'll be at that game then, correct?
Yeah, which we all know that's a good thing. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, no more rooting interest, just straight game preview. Good stuff right in your veins. Logan Paulson and I talk about how the Commanders' defense can ensure that Michael Penix's second game is nowhere near what he had in his first against the Giants. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It is the Hoffman Show. We are always live on the free Odyssey app. We're on the Team 980 and on YouTube at the Team 980 if you'd like to watch us. Maybe you're listening on the ride home right now. When you get home, your smart TV has that YouTube app. And if you're subscribed to the Team 980, anytime we are live, which not only includes our show, but our pregame and postgame coverage on the weekends, then we'll be right there at the top of your app on your smart TV. Of course, same thing for your tablet or smartphone, wherever it is that you like to watch your YouTube videos. I guess your computer as well. Perfectly fine place to do it. All right, Take Command. It's the podcast I do with Logan Paulson. You guys know that by now. Logan's very smart, and we try to make sure that we let you hear some of that here on the radio show. And Today is no different. Preview of the Commanders defense versus Michael Penix and this Falcons offense, of course, for the full edition of the preview show, including how Jayden Daniels and company can attack a very interesting Falcons defense. You got to check out the full edition and take command. But right now, Commanders defense versus Penix, take command style on a Friday. Sam Fortier coming at 5 o'clock. Take Command Podcast, Logan Paulson there, Craig Hoffman here, and it is game 2 for Michael Penix, the rookie quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, coming in relief of Kirk Cousins. And the first game was not much of a test, Logan. He got the New York Giants, who are not playing good football, to be very, very kind about it. Now he's Sunday Night Football on the road, potentially in the rain, against a Commanders defense that really locked it down for the final 3 quarters against Philadelphia. And it's funny, I got a stat for you that really proves why the Falcons went to Michael Penix. Kirk, obviously the interceptions and things just not going well, but their offense has the ability to be so much more dynamic with him. Penix was used in a design rollout on 24.1% of his dropbacks last week, his first start. That is the 8th highest by a qualified passer in a game this season. Kirk's rollout rate in weeks 1 through 15 when he was the starter, 2.3%, Logan. 2.3%. So, yeah, they wanted to be able to open up their offense a little bit, and I think, obviously, they were able to do that some against the Giants. They probably shut things down towards the end because they were up by a ton. What do you see from this Falcons offense, and what do you expect in Penix week 2?
This is a fun and kind of a dangerous group, and I mean the playmakers that they talk about are storied at this point. You got Bijan Robinson, you got Drake London, Ray McLeod is an explosive kind of slot player. Darnell Mooney's kind of seeing a career resurgence here, and it's an impressive, really an impressive group of playmakers. And you couple that with an offensive line that maybe doesn't get the pub that the Detroits or the Philly does, but a very, very good group in the front, in terms of how they run outside zone specifically. And one of the things you talked about there is this team is they've mastered outside zone. When you want to see what does outside zone look like in the NFL now, you watch the Atlanta Falcons. And so one of the things that makes outside zone so effective is the ability to run boots and keepers off of that action. And so when Kirk was in the offense, they just couldn't do it. Just wasn't a part of, I think physically he's obviously still kind of dealing with the Achilles. He just couldn't do it. And obviously you mentioned in the New York game how they used Penix and how they were able to kind of get him on the perimeter, and he'd made great decisions with those. And I wasn't sure how he'd do because he didn't really do a lot of that at UW. But one of the things that sticks out to me after watching the film, and again, it's one game against a team that is maybe the worst team in the NFL, is how much more effective the offense was with him, right? How much more grass the defense now has to defend, right? Because not only can he do the boots and the keepers and the kind of waggle play action, shots down the field, but he has a live arm, a big arm, in kind of countering what Kirk has been. Kirk has been a guy who throws with great anticipation, understanding that he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. Penix is kind of the antithesis of that. He can touch anywhere. He can take on the right hash, throwing a comeback to the left and get that thing on a frozen rope. And it's just impressive. And so I think that's the thing about him that's probably the most scary, is that all of a sudden now the field feels really big. And that's the thing you don't want to be dealing with as a defensive coordinator. You want that field to feel nice and small and compact. And that's kind of what Kirk was giving you. But now you've got the keepers, the boots, like we just talked about, which again, that affects how I rush, that affects how I fit runs. And then also his ability to kind of touch deeper down the field on these shot plays with explosive playmakers. And you can tell he's still working on his chemistry with Drake London, but if that gets worked out, Drake London, I think I've talked to you about this, I think is on the precipice of becoming a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. He is very dynamic. He can play in the slot. He can play out wide. He's got great short area quickness. He's hyper competitive at the catch point. He's an impressive dude to watch. And so if they kind of get that figured out where, hey, I can throw you a back shoulder whenever I want. I think he missed 2 to him in the game. But if they get that kind of back shoulder ability, he's a guy that, it's a 50-50 jump ball. Drake London, no, he's more than that. And so that's the thing about this game that all of a sudden feels a little bit sketchy to me. It's now all of a sudden you have way more grass to defend. You have way more elements of the quarterback to defend. And also, like, he's a 4-5 guy, and he scrambled a little bit in this game, which is something he didn't do a lot in college. That's an other element of his game that you need to be aware of. So I'm not saying he's, the next, he's, like the
he's not
the rookie. Right. He's not that guy, but he makes this offense significantly more potent and way more dangerous. And it'll be really interesting to see what Joe Wood Jr. does, because to me, it's like, you talk about what he's doing for him and kind of how he's expanded the field. Like, their rushing efficiency is crazy. Watching Bijan run outside zone is amazing. And then you pair that with Tyler Algier, who's like the hammer, they just are really good. And so for a team in Washington that, struggled stopping the run, obviously they did a great job last week. How do you kind of deal with this offense with a lot of playmakers?
Yeah, couple of things to touch on there. On Penix's mobility, listening back to the TV broadcast, I was watching the condensed game back from last week, and Kevin Kugler and Daryl Johnston, who had the game for Fox, were saying that, hey, the Atlanta coaching staff told us, don't be surprised if Penix takes off. Like, he wasn't known as a mobile guy. He didn't really do it at UW, but I think it's because he was told, like, don't run at Washington. And now it's like, hey, like, you're free. Go. Mm-hmm. And even though he's had the knee surgeries and whatever else, like, he has that club in his back. He's not super dynamic as a runner by any stretch, but if you give him green grass and just let him run straight, like, he can take it and slide and extend
fast
drives. And yeah, he's just straight up 4-5. Like, you can move. As far as London goes, God, watching him is fun. He's so quarterback friendly too. The first catch of the game he has last week runs just like your stereotypical square in, but he comes back with it and, like, just make sure that he gives Penix a good clean target. And as a big bodied guy, super competitive. That's one where we don't know, as we're recording this on Thursday morning, what Marshawn Lattimore's injury status is, but right. I would imagine if Lattimore is playing that he is shadowing London the entire game. And then you trust Sainer still on Darnell Mooney, and you go from there. But it is definitely a huge deal if Marshawn Lattimore is not going to be able to play, obviously, but especially with a guy in Drake London that is that big, that physical, and that competitive, like you said. But as for the running game, which is kind of the center of it all, Logan, you mentioned their mastery of outside zone. How about this from Next Gen Stats? Falcons rushers have been contacted behind the line of scrimmage on just 39.6 of their design rushes outside the tackle this season, the third lowest rate in the NFL. The Falcons have rushed outside on 69.7% of their design runs, the second highest rate in the NFL. So they're running that outside zone. And outside zone is one where you do get a lot of hits behind the line of scrimmage, because if one guy gets up the field, and because it's not like a straight ahead run where you're to the line of scrimmage quickly. Like, there's so much of that run that is spent behind the line of scrimmage, and you're taking that risk, because if that cutback hits, you're talking about a big gain. And so there's a high risk there. And so that number being that low I think, kind of shows, one, the ability of the offensive line to block it up. And two, there are times where Bijan perhaps makes a guy completely whiff and there is no contact behind the line of scrimmage, even though there was a penetrating defender, because Bijan is that elusive.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like a silky smoothness to his running style. And I'm kind of surprised, I guess, that he hasn't had more explosive runs this year, because he is so effective at making people miss in the hole and, making people miss behind line of scrimmage. Like, I don't want to say he's the best back in the NFL, because you got Saquon, you got Derrick Henry, but to me, of the people that I've watched this year, he feels like the third best guy. And he's running behind a really solid group. Obviously, Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry, Drew Dahlman's having a great year. Jake Matthews is still playing at a high level. Like, that's a good, consistent group. They're not the most physical, mauling. It's very different than Philadelphia, for example, the team we just played, in terms of how they get to their runs and what they do. But they do kind of a wide. They kind of are like, we are an outside zone team, and we're going to run outside zone 12 different ways, and we have a back who can elevate. And then the other thing is, like, if it's a little bit dicey, we can't, we're having a hard time. We've got Tyler Algier, who's also playing at a higher level. Like, in terms of back tandem, to me, they're kind of in the same pantheon as like the Detroit guys, and they don't get as much pub because they play in Atlanta, but it's a good group. So to me, like the number one thing to be worried about in this game, we talked a lot about Michael Penix, we talked about Drake London. It's like you got to slow them down in terms of efficiency, right? In terms of how efficient they are running the football, and this is going to be a different test than what we've seen the past couple of weeks, because there's a schematic kind of nuance to what they do, and then obviously which, because of all the motions and the shifts and the pre-snap stuff they do, think like kind of pseudo Tampa Bay-ish with some of the stuff that they do, right? Like where it's like, we're going to jet motion, we're going to shift and hit you back with this, and it's like a little bit like, going to test your rules, going to test your fits, and you can't play super heavy boxes to him, I don't think, because of Penix at the quarterback spot. So it's going to be a really interesting day in terms of presenting a matchup or finding a way to slow them down running the football, I think. So I really don't envy Joe Witt Jr. this week if Penix can produce the same way he did last week. And again, like, he was super efficient. I think his completion percentage was very high. He had 4 drops. His interception, the receiver basically handed the guy the ball. Like,
he hit Kyle Pitts in the hands. Rookie mistake.
Yeah. And so, if Penix can play with that level of efficiency and they can run the ball the way they have been running it, this is going to be a tough defensive kind of, what do you take away? What's more important? And I would probably lean towards taking away the running game and just say, hey, Penix, try to beat us from the pocket.
Yeah, I would 100% do that. I would play with a lot of single safety, just chin down in the box. Quan, you're responsible for center field. Marshawn, if you're playing, we're trusting you on London, and let's see what's going on from there. The other big thing you mentioned, how like, is Bijan the best back in the league? Like, probably not. Like, it feels wrong to put him over Saquon and Derrick Henry, but he does statistically have the most missed tackles in the league.
He's exceptional, man. He's exceptional.
The first Commander he makes miss on Sunday, I'm going to assume that there's going to be at least one, will be his 100th forced missed tackle of the season. That said, yeah. Wow. So he's got 99 coming into this game, which is the most. Here, hold on. Let me go back to the stat. 99 missed tackles this season, most in the NFL, and tied for 4th most by any player through the first 16 weeks of a season since 2018. So we're talking about a premier player playing at a very high level. However, the Commanders have recorded the 5th lowest missed tackle rate on run plays this season. On all plays, the Commanders have the 3rd lowest missed tackle rate. So the Commanders, after like week 1, week 2, where they missed a bunch of tackles, have really cleaned that up. And that has been kind of a point of pride this season, that they do not miss a ton of tackles. And I feel like sometimes even when they do, like, they rally pretty immediately. So that's going to be really important this weekend. But I think that the offensive line in general, like, that is the key, not only in the run game, but Penix last week was pressured quite a bit, but he got the ball out so fast it didn't matter. I think it was 2.47 seconds to throw. So you were talking like light. That's like Tua levels of getting the ball out. And so can the Commanders actually get home? Can the Commanders, one, be stickier on the back end than the Giants were and force Penix to hold the football? And 2, can they get home in a way that the Giants had no shot at last week? And I think part of this is their pressure packages, where they are really dynamic in what they do with Luvu moving around and with Bobby moving around. And we'll see, if John Allen's back this week, they've used Payne in some funky alignments. Like, do they get John in some of those as well? And I think that's going to be fun to watch, because watching the Giants try to blitz the Falcons was like almost comical at times. How well the Falcons offensive line slid, picked everything up, kept Penix clean, and then he's able to get rid of the ball quickly. And against a much better organized blitzing team, can they repeat that kind of performance? I think that's a huge key for this one for Washington, is the ability to actually get pressure on a rookie in a way that New York did not at all last week.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because like, this team, this offensive line specifically, is kind of they're built with a bunch of run blockers. And that's not to say they can't pass protect, but like, in my mind, this team is like, it's like kind of the problem that like 90s Broncos teams ran into. Like, they're really good at running outside zone. They're not great. So like, outside zone, play action pass, keeper's boots, right? They're really good at running that stuff. But in like straight drop back situations, they're not like great. Caleb McGarry, I was there when they drafted him. I think he's a good football player. It's been cool to see him kind of save his career and figure it out. But versus speed rushers in drop back situations, not great, right? Jake Matthews, again, is one of the most savvy players you'll ever be around, but doesn't handle power rushers very well. Like, there are some elements to them as a drop back team that if I'm the offensive coordinator, I'm really, really aware of. The thing is, like, they've built this thing so that they don't have to be in those situations that often. But to your point, like, when they are in those situations and you can kind of corral the quarterback, make him hold the football, I do think there are wins there in terms of creating pressures and giving opportunities to kind of switch the game with sacks and turnovers in that regard. So I think that's a great point. And I think it's also reinforced from like a personnel and just like a roster construction kind of position.
Yeah, I would just blitz the hell out of them the entire game. Like, honestly, if I'm Joe Witt, I would just say, we're going to run blitz you. We're going to pass blitz you. Like, every blitz that we got, we're just going to throw it at you and try to mess up. You're so good at blocking outside zone. Well, what happens if there's an extra dude in somewhere random? Like, can you do that? Now, the Commanders have one of the highest explosive run rates against in the league. I think fans probably intuitively feel that, emotionally feel that. So sometimes that can backfire, and against a back like Bijan, that's dangerous. But I do think that just like, hey, we're bringing pressure no matter what, and we're going to trust our back end is probably the way to go in this one. Anything else from either personnel, like what you expect from John Allen or what they do without Lattimore? Or, I mean, we kind of covered some of this. Or anything else that I haven't mentioned that we want to get to from this game before we head on out of here and wait anxiously all day on Sunday for Sunday Night Football?
It's weird. Like, this feels like one of the better offenses that we've played this year. Like, I'm just thinking back, like, I like Philly. They've got explosive playmakers, but in terms of like what the offense is, it's very kind of static. Like, this is what we do. New Orleans, obviously with a backup quarterback, not great. Tennessee with, Will Levis, not great. And then all of a sudden you get this group coming in off this Giants game. You're like, man, they're really effective running the ball. They've got well-designed pass concepts. They've got a guy, at least in one game, has shown ability to get the ball there. And so I'm kind of curious, honestly, to see how they handle some of the mental elements of this, right? Because it's not going to be Philly where it's like, hey, we're throwing it to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. Like, we dare you to take them away. And when we're running, we're going to bring in more tight ends. We're going to run the ball. It's not like that. It's a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more kind of tendency breaking. So I'm kind of curious to see how the defense does. I think, they can win physical matchups, but there's like a mental side to this game that's going to be a little bit more challenging. And I really can't wait to watch. And I think the other thing too, which I feel like we've talked about every week, but it's so important to touch on, is that if the offense can support the defense, right? Possess the football, go on long drives, find points, then I think it alleviates some of the pressure that Joe Witt Jr. is experiencing, right? To say, oh, we have to stop the run. We have to blitz. Like, I can be a little bit more conservative, a little bit bend but don't break. And I think they've had a lot of success with that formula over the course of this season. So again, I think it's important just to remind myself that this is a team that needs to play complementary football at all times. And if they can, then some of the risky stuff that you just talked, which I actually think schematically is a good idea. Like, let's run blitz. Let's get penetrators. Let's do some things here. Let's blitz on third down. Like, we don't need to be as aggressive because our offense is going to kind of support us and keep us in a positive game flow. So I think that's something really interesting. And it's one of those things where by the end of these shows, I'm always like, I wonder what they're going to do. I wonder if this is how this looks, because you've kind of talked through all of these different things. And that's one thing specifically that I'm really curious about.
For sure. I feel like at the end of every single week, I'm like, oh, the Commanders are going to win this weekend, no matter what, because you talk about all the things they need to do to win, and you start to think about what happens if they happen. But it's a great challenge, and that's what you have to kind of snap out of that and be like, oh, yeah, but it's hard. They actually have to do them. And if they do on Sunday, though, Logan, they are in the playoffs. 11 wins for the first time since the early 90s. Just an exceptional season in year one of the Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, Jayden Daniels era. And we also should know, I mean, frankly, by the time some people are listening to this, we might even have a better idea of the playoff hopes for Washington, because the Seattle-Chicago game is tonight. That I'm anticipating the Bears upsetting the Seahawks, but who knows? But we're getting to the point in the season with only 2 games remaining, and with Washington playing the second to last game of the weekend, we might know if Washington is in before kickoff, which in some ways would be even more fun, because then it becomes like this stress-free coronation of a game as opposed to a like stress fest. Oh my God, they have to win this to get in. But either way, should be a lot of fun at Northwest Stadium on Sunday night. We are going to do live post game. There is no telling how that's going to go. It's going to be way past my bedtime, but we will be live Sunday night / early Monday morning on YouTube at the Team 980, at 1067 The Fan, at Craig Hoffman for the post-game show. And if you are going to bed right after the game, it will be in your podcast feed in the morning. So we'll see you then. To see you at the game. Again, if you're going to the game and it's not raining and you want me to stop by your tailgate, shoot me a message on Instagram at hoffman.sports. Anthony Haney, my radio producer, and I are going to be perusing the parking lots unless it's raining, and then I'll be inside. That's our show. We'll see you on Sunday night. Commanders-Falcons. Can't wait. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command, which has a brand new home.
That's right. You can watch on YouTube at the Team 980.
You can also listen to full episodes in the free Odyssey app, which is now enabled with Apple CarPlay. So we'll just, follow you around. It's a Football Friday on the Hoffman Show. Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. And it is time, just after 5 o'clock, for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Sam Fortier covers the Commanders for the Washington Post. It is his beat, and there's plenty going on his beat as we prepare for Sunday Night Football coming up this weekend. Sammy, what's up, dude? How are you?
You know, man, Christmas week is always a busy week in the NFL, just with all the other things going on. So I went home to Maine for the first time in like 4 years. So
oh, wow.
I'm still trying to get everything together because I had some early and late flights. I'll tell you, man.
Yeah, and travel this time of year is famously easy because no one else is doing it.
Right, and there's never any weather delays. There's no impacts. It's totally fine.
Speaking of the weather, because it's our show, and you know what would be our show without funny bits before we get into the actual football. Anthony and I were planning on treading on your terrain this weekend. We were going to go around the parking lots and tailgate a little bit and do some vlogging. And for those that don't know, Sam has become a viral TikTok superstar with all the things that he does on game days around Northwest Stadium. But it's raining. There's rain in the forecast before the game on Sunday, Sam. So as the keeper of pregame video content, like, do Anthony and I have to tough this out, or we just say no? We're not. We just go inside and be dry and scrap the vlogging for the weekend.
I got to say, Craig, I saw your selfie video before the last game, and I thought to myself, wow, we might have to have a social video brawl in the parking lot if he keeps doing this. So I'm glad that you brought it up here so we can fight about it on air, turn it into more content. No, I would say, look, like, it's hard to do that stuff if you like, I think that you need fans to be bought in. You need people to be having a good time and willing to engage. And if it's 50 degrees and raining, I think that would be tough. But I will let you figure that out for yourself. I encourage you to get out there and do your thing.
If it's 50 degrees and rainy, and I know me, I'm going to be inside. We'll be in the press box. Sam, if you want to watch Vikings Packers together in the press box, that's fine with me because that's where I'm going to be if it's raining.
Dude, that's one of the things. It's crazy to me, Craig. Like, I was actually having a conversation with Tyler Biadasz, the center, about this today in the locker room. Because we were talking about culture and winning, and I was like, I think winning is culture. It's not that simple, but it's like, it's close to that. And he was like, no, I think culture is a foundation. It's a really big part of winning. And I was like, look, man, respectfully, like, you have not been here the last 4 years when everything was about changing the culture and then the wins did not follow. And so I think that what you just said about watching Packers and Vikings is really indicative of, like, why this year feels so different. Like, we are talking about, will they get the 6th or the 7th seed in the playoffs instead of will they pick 2nd or 5th in the draft. And it's just, it's really refreshing, man.
No, it's great. And, I think that we're talking about that, and we're talking about it in a season that if records were more normal in other places, like, they're probably talking about the 5 seed. But unfortunately, the NFC North is just full of behemoths, and so they're stuck all the way down. As you reflect on the season, let's dive into that a little bit. As you reflect on the season, which is obviously not over yet with 2 enormous games to go, like, outside of 5, what's the biggest difference around the building being there every day? Or is it as simple as, like, once you've figured out the quarterback and the wins come, everything changes? Is it, that order of cart and horse, if you will?
This is going to sound like such a blah corporate speak answer, but, like, the alignment of the vision of what they want to do, I think, is really impressive to me. And, like, that starts with 5, right? Like, hey, we're going to do that, we're going to run these concepts. We're going to, like, really accentuate his strengths. We're going to, try to attack the defense's weaknesses, and coming up with unique game plans every week and figuring out, like, hey, this is how we run our offense is really impressive. And also, like, the way that they are situationally aware was very impressive to me. And like, honestly, it was a little too on the nose that they happened to run the play Fiesta to the touchdown to Jamison Crowder there at the end last week. They had run it exactly the day before in practice, or on Friday in practice, and they had run a safe 2-point conversion in practice, which Cliff Kingsbury in his press conference was like, I'm always like, why would we even do that? And then we had to do it in that circumstance. So like their level of preparation and like the alignment in the organization say, hey, like this is how we're going to win this game. Like it all starts with having the talent to do that, but then to be able to follow up and execute in a way that say the Bears haven't or other teams around the league have not. I think that's really impressive.
I agree. And it's something that I've thought about a lot this week coming out of that Eagles game. And kind of where I've landed on it, Sam Fortier is our guest here on the Hoffman Show, of course, Commanders beat reporter and TikTok superstar for the Washington Post. The way that I've thought about it is this. The league is designed that every team goes 8-8 in terms of salary cap rules and obviously competitive balance considerations. You're the worst team in the league one year. You get the best team or the best pick in the draft. The league is designed to try to create as much parity as possible. And thus, most games, most weekends are one-score games kind of decided in the margins. And ultimately, the more talented teams win in those margins. But the Commanders have been able to overcome the talent gap because they practice the margins at such a higher rate than anybody else, where they like this is, I don't know, when you were covering the Chargers or, the other coaches, around the league, if you have found another place that practices situational football as much as this, I have not. And of course I have not because John Keim is not, and he's covered the same team I have for 2.5 times as long. And we've just never seen a team that is this locked in on this many situations so that they have something like they had last Friday where they practice the exact situation in practice and almost predict the way the game is going to end. That's kind of where I've landed on it, is that situational excellence is able to overcome whatever talent gap they have. What do you think of that theory of the case and how they've been able to do this in year one of a rebuild where there's 30 new, or at this point with all the injuries and changeover, 40 new guys here from where we ended last season?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. There's two things I would say to that. One, hiring Dave Gardy, a respected executive from the league office, to be your situational guru, to think to yourself, hey, it is not enough for us to say we need to be situationally aware. We also need to create a role and give a salary to a guy for whom that is his job. He will watch all the games. He will figure out all the situations, and then we will execute them. And then also, this is something I talked to Marcus Mariota about. I have a story dropping on Marcus tomorrow that I'm actually really excited about that pertains to, the last time he was in Atlanta and when he was on the quarterback documentary Netflix series and kind of his growth and journey since then. But basically, he told me that he really wanted to go back west last free agency. He was like, look, Las Vegas is there's so many Hawaiians there. They call it the ninth island. He was like, I want to be back on the West Coast, which is where my family is. He had a kid, he had a baby 2 years ago. And he was like, when Washington initially called, I was like, I don't think so. But the vision that Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury and Brian Johnson articulated to him was so exciting. And the working environment that Dan Quinn talked about was so exciting that he was like, you know what, I'm in. And so to me, all of the things that we're talking about kind of build on each other, but being situationally aware and, having such a clear, actionable vision for the quarterback position, particularly, that all builds on each other.
And if they were that intent on Marcus, and I think some fans would be like, they were trying to sell Marcus Mariota, just go sign someone who's a backup. But that's not how they think about anything. They're intentional about everything that they do. And I think that is so different. And when we think about what it means to be professional grade, to me, that's something that absolutely stands out.
Absolutely. And kind of to your point about Marcus Mariota, I think, and Marcus and I talked about this in depth, you can talk about whatever you want in terms of his play during preseason or, he looks good against Carolina. But I think having a veteran in that room with Jayden who can kind of talk to him about, here's how you handle the pressure of being a number 2 pick and kind of having a franchise on your shoulders. Here's how you handle the idea of everyone saying, protect yourself, you're the franchise, while also playing the game that got you here. Just the wisdom and the shared experience that those two have, I think that even honestly, I underrated it in training camp. And now that I've talked to more people, I'm like, oh, that's super real. And that's like a really helpful thing for the development of the most important person in your program.
Of course, if you want more on that from Sam, check out the story tomorrow, WashingtonPost.com/sports. As for being in the building as much as you were this week, as you mentioned, you were home for part of the week, and obviously Wednesday they were off because of Christmas and whatever. Like, as you talk to people around the team, how have they come down and managed the high of that win over the Eagles and gotten ready for a primetime game against the Falcons on Sunday night with the whole country watching?
I mean, I think people are fired up for it, man. Like, I was talking to Frankie Louvu, and I was like, hey, in Carolina, did you play a game that was even, like, close to this level of magnitude and excitement? And he was like, no, like, not even close. And I was like, it's funny, man, because there's a lot of dudes who I think that's true for. Terry was here, obviously, when they played on Sunday Night Football against the Giants 2 years ago. But, like, that even wasn't, the same magnitude of, you can clinch a playoff spot right now. You can do it by beating a team that's pretty good in its own right, and like the whole country's going to be watching. I think that it's going to be one of the biggest games that many of these guys have played. And not everyone, obviously, because some dudes have played in some really big games. But I think everyone is ready to go, and I don't think they're getting too high or too low. And I think that's typified by Jayden. I was talking to Cliff at his press conference this week, and I was like, so what, like, how is this possible? Like, why does Jayden keep making these plays late in games? And he was like, he is the best I have ever been around at not getting too high off of his successes. Like, it's unbelievable, especially for a rookie. And I think that, like, they're going to keep saying stuff like that, people around the building. And at some point, like, you got to hear them that, like, for whatever reason, Jayden just does, it's inherent with him that at least so far, we've never seen him get too high off of a big win.
No, it's 100% true. He has like a supernatural demeanor. It's wild for someone his age. Nevertheless, anybody who's a competitor at that level with the emotion you need to play the game to be able to control it that much is super special. When you look at the Falcons matchup, what sticks out to you as the key? Because I can make an argument they should attack this Falcons defense through the air and try to attack a secondary that's, got some playmakers, obviously, but you can get some yards on. Also, their pass rush is like not a factor at all. They're also not very good up front against the run. So if you're Cliff and the staff this week, how do you think you go about attacking this Falcons defense for one reason or another?
You just outlined two very interesting things to me, because obviously, like, the Commanders' run game has been a big problem, and you couldn't get the running backs going in the design run game last week. And obviously, this is a much different defense, and so maybe B-Rob and company have a little bit more room to run. And Cliff Kingsbury said, hey, if we're gonna be effective in the run game, our problem right now is paralysis by analysis, not moving fast enough and trying to figure things out. And so I think that is obviously one way to do it. And I asked Cliff, I was like, can you guys, I know you don't want to, but can you guys win consistently without much success in the design run game with running backs? And he like kind of grinned and looked at me. He was like, if Five's healthy, yes. Like if the quarterback,
we played that soundbite, Sam, on the show yesterday, and I could not believe he answered that way, because no coordinator's like, yeah, if we don't run the ball, it's fine. And Cliff's kind of like, and by the way, Cliff's someone who has run the ball way more than anyone realizes, because everyone's like, oh, air raid Cliff Kingsbury, was like, yeah, if Five's healthy, our rookie quarterback will probably figure it out.
Right? Like that's
what is
nuts.
that?
But Craig, tell him he's wrong.
No, I refuse to tell him he's wrong, because they just did it against the defense that was allegedly the number one defense in the league and have been playing like it for a month and a half, and they had 5 turnovers while they did it.
Exactly. And so, like, when I think, oh, yeah, like, they could attack the secondary, but, oh, De'Ami Brown's out, so it's basically Terry McLaurin, Olamide Zaccheaus, Jamison Crowder. Like the pass-catching options, Zach Ertz is probably still not 100%. Like, the pass-catching options are not great. And then you think to yourself, like, they have 5, and 5 seems fully healthy, and, they will just figure it out. It's incredible.
It is. It is. I do think that Luke McCaffrey could be in for an interesting week in a good way this week. That's going to be a fun one to watch, replacing Diami on some of the stuff. But it's also worth remembering that is now their third outside receiver, Noah Brown, Diami, and now Luke, if he's out there. We'll see if KJ Osborne makes his debut. I would assume so this weekend, but he's a very different kind of receiver. So TBD on that side of it. On the other side of the ball, Sam, just how big of a loss is Marshawn Lattimore in this matchup with the Falcons and specifically against Drake London?
Yeah, I think that he's a big loss because, as we've seen, Benjamin St-Juste and Mike Davis, who are going to fill in for Lattimore, just are not the same caliber of guy through no fault of their own. And I want to make a quick aside here that Benjamin St-Juste, he has not played the way he's wanted to play. The coaches have obviously reduced his playing time for a reason. But, just the amount of online hate I think that he gets, at least in Twitter mentions and Instagram that I see, is, disproportionate to his effect on the game. I know he came in and had a penalty the other day, but, it's become a lot. He's become, the target of a lot of frustration for fans. And it's always weird to see, Troy Apke was that years ago.
Yep.
It's just always weird to see a guy become that guy,
No, I think that's a good aside, and it's something we've had to address on this show as well, because I've had the gall and audacity to say he's not the worst corner in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, it's incredible. But, I think that I'm very curious to see how much Joe Witt pressures this game, especially with Michael Penix. I know that he was complimentary of Michael Penix and not a dude that, was rattled in his first NFL start and obviously played a lot of big games in college and is a guy who they think can come in and do some stuff right away. But the offense still starts with Bijan Robinson and the running backs, and you got to tighten that up. But so to me, and I think getting John Allen back is going to be a huge plus. I think that the Commanders, if they stop the run and make Penix, kind of do it all, or at least put the heavier burden on him, even though Lattimore isn't out there, I feel like that's still a successful recipe for them.
So on the run defense side of it, they this run defense last week had both one of the worst performances of any run defense against a running back all season and one of the best all in the same game. 7 carries, 109, 2 touchdowns, turns into the next 22 carries for 41 yards and hitting Saquon Barkley behind the line of scrimmage 59% of the time, minus 4 yards before contact on the final 22 rushes. They're neither of those. They're somewhere in the middle. Which one is closer to who this run defense actually is?
I would say it's closer to the first half where Barkley was ripping off some explosive gains, but they did it for a half, and I have not seen any, reason that they shouldn't do that, shouldn't be closer to that against Atlanta than they were in the first half against Philly. And I think that honestly, man, when you talk to coaches, some coaches will say we play, no matter how long the season is, we play 50% of our games how good we are, 25% worse than we are, 25% better than we are. And the run defense just picked the perfect time to step up and play 25%, of that better than they were. And so the Commanders got to hope that they can keep doing that against the Falcons because, they're really talented, but they're not the Eagles' offensive line and Saquon.
No, definitely not. Bijan's super explosive, but different kind of dude. And that they also a very different run scheme. They're just masters of that outside zone stuff and the play action off of it, which they can now actually run because they have a quarterback with 2 functioning ankles. Sorry, Kirk. All right, last but not least for Sam Fortier, beat reporter for the Washington Post, covering the Commanders. And on top of all the great football analysis that Sam does, he has been the person in their sports department leading their coverage of the RFK situation. And Sam, had we had you on exactly a week ago, we would have been like, well, RFK thing is dead. And then we wake up Saturday morning and lo and behold, they pass the RFK provision as a separate bill, unanimous consent in the Senate. We had your colleague Megan Flynn on to talk about it, as well as some of your other colleagues that have been talking about it. But for you covering this from the Commanders side of it and kind of the football end and just following the story overall with a week to reflect, how absurd was that 24 hours through your eyes of the provision dying and then all of a sudden the bill coming back to life and ultimately landing on Joe Biden's desk to sign and the RFK land being in the hands of D.C.?
Shout out to Megan Flynn. She's an incredible reporter, has been an incredible teammate throughout this process. Look, man, I mean, on Friday, when the provision came out, probably around a week ago this time, I sent out a tweet being like, things look bleak. Like, the Commanders are likely going to have to figure out what they're going to do. Are they going to try to put DC or Virginia on the table after the new year? And I got a text from a source that was like, wait a second, like, we're cooking over here. And so, dude, like, it was pretty remarkable. I just, you never expect to be watching C-SPAN at 1:15 a.m. on a Saturday, and then there I was, and I was, and I was like, wow, like this thing is really happening. And then, from there, it's like I hope that people appreciate that, like, this was an incredible Hail Mary. Obviously, when you look back at it, it all looks like, of course, that was going to happen in the same way that Jayden made that throw against Chicago, but it was I've been writing about this story for 2 years, and at no point did you think, okay, like this is for sure going to happen.
Man, Sam, I mean this sincerely. I hope that's the last time in your life you're watching C-SPAN at 1:15 a.m. on a Saturday.
Hey, man, me too.
I mean, you're a serious reporter when you need to be. You cover some stuff, and the nature of being in D.C. is sometimes our lives take weird turns towards Capitol Hill. I hope, for the love of all things holy, whatever deity it is that you pray to, that is the last time in your career you have to watch C-SPAN at 1:15 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Sam Fortier, Washington Post, read his work. He's got the story dropping tomorrow morning on Marcus Mariota. And Sam, I will either see you in the press box or in the parking lots at Northwest Stadium on Sunday night.
Yes, I look forward to it, man.
All right. Thanks, buddy. See ya. That's Sam Fortier with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we go around the NFL. We will get you set. There's a ton of injury news around the league, some contract news around the league, and we also have, of course, our picks on the remaining games of the weekend. It's all next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And, of course, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up at 6 o'clock, our Pick 6 at 6, where we will pick 6 players who we think are going to have the biggest impact on the game outside of the quarterbacks. And there's definitely some interesting choices to make around the Commanders and Falcons, thanks purely to the injury report. Not only is Marshawn Lattimore out, but De'Ami Brown is out as well. Andrew Wiley. So some key players for Washington out this weekend as the Commanders host the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. By the way, game captains Dan Quinn announced earlier, Frankie Louvu, Nick Bellore on special teams, and Jayden Daniels as the Commanders get ready to host Michael Penix and the Falcons. As far as the picks go, Anthony and I are 3-0 on the week. We both have the Chiefs over the Steelers, the Ravens over the Texans, and the Seahawks over the Bears. Anthony, may we never speak of Seahawks-Bears again. Oh my God, what a terrible football game that was.
Horrible. And I'm not going to lie, I was really rooting on the Bears to pull off some type of miracle because the drive sort of kind of looked promising, and then they just ran out of luck.
Caleb got hit in the throat. I don't know if you saw that. Like, what they wasted some extra time there because apparently Caleb got hit in the throat.
Yeah, he did, and he just laying there like he almost just got like he died or something.
Yeah, I mean, God, the Boo Birds were out. No points in the second half. Just constant crap fest. The one good thing, and I feel bad for the actual guy that this is happening to an extent, but the one good thing is the Bears are so bad that Thomas Brown is not going to, they're not going to do the thing that say the Raiders did with Antonio Pierce or others who, when they hire the interim coach because the team like plays really well, I don't think that's a risk with the Bears. I think, in fact, they're probably going to blow everybody out. Ryan Poles, see ya, on down the list. GM, coach, OC, DC. I mean, they kind of already fired the DC because that was kind of floose. But I think it is a fresh start, clean slate. Everybody comes in, and things are going to be very different in that building in Chicago. And I think that's a good thing because, I think that when you look at, say, Sean Payton coming into Denver, and I don't agree with how he handled Russell Wilson. I think there was an aggressiveness towards Russ that was probably overkill. But the idea of like, hey, man, I'm in charge. We're going to do things my way. And I think that the current staff that came in, way too much was put on Caleb Williams' plate. And you saw it in Hard Knocks. They just like anointed him the starter. He's the guy. They didn't bring in any veterans to support him. He's having one-on-one meetings with the coach. Like it was just the offense was designed where he is way too over-leveraged. And I think a new GM and a new head coach that come in with a very different approach of how do we support our quarterback? How do we take things off of his plate? How do we establish a completely different culture where he is not the center of the universe, even though he's good enough to be? But like, I even think of like, when you think of Kansas City, Mahomes is the center of the universe, but I don't think Pat is treated that way in terms of like the locker room and stuff. Like there's other guys that matter. He's one of the guys. And I think the way that Caleb was set up was almost like he's above everyone else. And I think that's a recipe for disaster. And so if I'm the new coach going in there, like I'm trying to find ways to make sure that Caleb is integrated into the group, that there are other people on the leadership hierarchy that are above him. Like obviously the Commanders did this year with a guy like Bobby Wagner. They need to find a Bobby Wagner to come in and be like, I'm in charge of the locker room. And I think that would do wonders for Caleb and wonders for the team. And I don't know who that coach is going to be. Apparently Pete Carroll is interested, which I think is fascinating. Like I'm not anti that if I'm the Bears, because there are a few better culture builders in the last 30 years of football than what Pete built in Seattle. But I think that is definitely a coach who has that kind of culture first leadership type of stuff, I think is really important. And then you figure out the OC that makes sense, who can be a quarterback supporter. And, if God forbid, like Mike McDaniel gets fired if he gets fired in Miami, like I would run so hard at him for either head coach or offensive coordinator. So I think that obviously because how talented Caleb is, like the Bears are the most fascinating team going into this offseason. But just some thoughts as they continue to go from a team that was 4-2 when they took the Commanders on the verge of 5-2 until the Hail Mary, and instead that was the first of 10 straight losses.
It's still so crazy to think about. They've lost 10 straight, and the last real chance they had at winning a game was a Hail Mary. It's crazy.
Whoopsie daisies.
Man.
Anyway, long story short, Anthony and I got the game correct. All right, let's pick some more games. Let's go around the NFL and some huge injury notes for some of these games. And again, it's a very odd schedule this weekend because, like, Red Zone's not going to be nearly as good because you have Saturday football tomorrow as well, starting with Chargers and Patriots. I don't know how this game got moved to Saturday, but sure. Chargers are 5-point favorites on the road at New England. I mean, look, there are worse ways to spend a rainy Saturday, which it's supposed to be here in the district, than watching Drake May and Justin Herbert. And I know people feel a certain type of way about Drake May in this market, a certain segment of the Commanders fan base, because they were Team Jayden Daniels, and now they're sworn to hate Drake May forever. And I would tell you, stop being foolish. Both guys are allowed to be good, and that's because both guys actually are good. Drake May has played really well. Now, it's the full Drake May experience. I'd rather have Daniels, just to be clear. But it's the full Drake May where you're getting some crazy turnovers and silly things, but he has been able to elevate what is the worst unit in football offensively, like should be ranked 32nd. We're ranked 32nd with Jacoby Brissett to like the 21st-ish in EPA per play. They're fun to watch in that way. Like Drake May is fun to watch, and then Herbert's like a cyborg. Plus, this is way, I don't want to say more important, but super key, certainly more important for the rest of the season than anything I just said about the Patriots because they don't matter. The Chargers have J.K. Dobbins back in this game, and they have really taken a hit offensively since he was out. Now he is back. They're starting running back. I'll take the Chargers on the road in a game that I think they clinch a playoff spot with a win, and I'll take them to do that.
Are you watching this game by chance?
If I'm home and there's nothing, like I'm not doing anything else, then yeah, I'll definitely check into this game.
Is it a 7:30 kick?
No, it's a 1 p.m. There's 3 games tomorrow.
Oh, there's 3. I'm going to take the Chargers. I don't know how much of the game I'll watch. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. It's going to be a rainy, crappy day. And so, if we can find something to do, like, look, I'm going to put it this way. I'm not going to stay home to watch Chargers-Patriots, but if I am home, I'll watch. This game, I kind of want to make sure I'm home to watch. Broncos, Bengals. Cincinnati favored by 3.5. They have to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. They also need a lot of help. But the Bengals sitting at 7-8, taking out a Broncos team that I believe also clinches with a win at 9-6.
Yeah, they both clinch.
Yeah, so if they win, they're in. Cincinnati can keep their hopes alive. They need help as well, but they keep their hopes alive with a win. Their offense has continued to roll. Their defense has done enough. The Broncos defense has taken a minor step back, but they're still playing at a really high level. And obviously, Bo Nix is kind of hit or miss week in, week out. Jamar Chase, 108, 15-10 on the yardage, 16 touchdowns. All 3 lead the NFL. Joe Burrow's next touchdown, by the way, will be 40 on the year. He also has a shot at going for 5,000 yards. He is about 770, or not about, he's 771 yards short. So he needs 2 monster games. Do you think he can get one against this Broncos defense led by Pat Surtain?
Craig, we get Jamar Chase, Pat Surtain Saturday mid-afternoon.
Hell
That is fun. That is fun. I think I'm going to go with the Bengals, though. I think if there's a guy that I'm betting on to come up clutch, and he's played well all season long, it's the Joe Burrow guy. The defense has definitely, been the demise to the team as a whole. But offensively, they've been clicking. I expect Jamar Chase to go out there, continue to chase the Triple Crown. And I need the Bengals anyway to go out there and win, because if they win, that helps my Colts. So I'm rooting for the Bengals.
The Colts are ahead, as are the Dolphins, of the Bengals based off tiebreakers and such. And by the way, your Colts have the easiest schedule remaining. They have basically 2 bye weeks. We'll get to the first of their 2 bye weeks, as bye week as you get in Week 17 in the NFL, coming up in just a little bit. I will take the Bengals as well. I also just trust in Burrow. If they were just flip their record. If they're 8-7, even if they're 9-6 and they're in the playoffs at this point, Burrow is right there with Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson is an MVP candidate. He has been that sensational this year. It's just their defense has been terrible, and you're not gonna, considering how well Allen and Jackson have played and how much better their teams are, I don't think you can vote for Burrow anything higher than 3. I think it's probably between he and Barkley for 3 and 4. But yeah, that is how good Joe Burrow has been this year. Cardinals and Rams. Rams can all but clinch, or can they outright clinch the NFC West with a win, Anthony? Or do they have to win this game and week 17 or week 18 against the Seahawks?
They're 9-6. The Seahawks are 9-7.
Are now 9-7. So they would have one to go. It would just depend on the tiebreakers.
Yeah.
I don't have the playoff scenarios in front of me. Here's what I do know. The Rams are 6.5-point favorites. And if they lose, they would then be tied with the Seahawks going into the final week of the regular season. I think they hold the tiebreaker already because they're the current, like even going into last night, they were currently ahead on the tiebreaker. So the Rams win, they should be in pending week 18. But yeah, Rams 6.5-point favorites over the Cardinals. I do think the Cardinals will cover here. Like they kind of pooped away their season last week with that loss to the Carolina Panthers in overtime. I would have to think they're pretty ticked off. Also, these two teams have played a ton of weird games over the years, but it's time for Matthew Stafford to just step up, be like, I still, when the moment calls, I'm in that same age range as Steph. I'm in that same age range as LeBron. Sometimes in a one-game scenario, the old man still got it. I will say Stafford and company pull this thing out at home over Arizona.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Rams as well. And to give you an update on that playoff scenario, the Rams can clinch if they win and Seattle loses. So I think it's just going to come down to week 18 because the Seahawks already won.
Yeah, there we go. Here, hold on. Let me see this real quick. The Rams, have an 81% chance to make the playoffs. So, yeah, they're going to have to wait until week 18. Okay. That is the Saturday football. 3 big games, all with playoff implications. There are a limited number of games on Sunday, but we will go through all of them as well as the Monday Nighter. Next, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. All right, we're going around the NFL for our pick six at 6. There's a lighter game schedule, obviously, on Sunday because of the 3 Saturday games, the Thursday nighter, and the Wednesday Christmas games. And a lot of these are pretty meaningless. They're meaningful on 2 fronts: draft position and if you gamble. Other than that, not a lot of meaning. So we'll roll through some of these. The Jets are fighting for draft position. The Bills are fighting for seeding. Buffalo favored by 10, Anthony, over New York. And I actually picked this game New York-wise on Competition Wednesday because I hate myself and went against my operating ethos of never picking the Gents. But this is a lot of points for a divisional game. That said, Buffalo's going to win, I do believe. And a win for them would lock up the 2 seed.
I'm going with the Bills to put belt to butt on the Jets. I don't know. I just think they're playing substantially better football. I will say, if Aaron Rodgers goes out there and looks like the Aaron Rodgers of the Packers, which he's capable of because we saw what he did with Devontae 2 weeks ago, this could definitely be an interesting game. It could definitely be some popcorn.
Definitely could be. Remember, Devontae had 9 catches for 198 and a half. So they are potent if they decide to pull their heads out of their butts, but they probably will do something. They'll put their head out of their butt. And
this could be his game.
Yeah, stub their toe. They'll do something dumb because they're the Jets, and dumb is what they do. Raiders and Saints. This game matters for draft position only. Saints are at home. And the Raiders are favored by 1.5 because why? I don't know that we're going to agree. I'm just saying that we don't need to talk about this game. So 1, 2, 3, Saints.
Jags.
The Jags aren't even playing. Raiders, Saints.
All right. Let's try it again.
1, 2, 3, Saints.
Raiders.
Okay. You're just trying to make up games on me picking wise. Colts and Giants. Indy -7.5. If they can beat the Giants and then beat another terrible team, the Jags, in Week 18, and they get help from the Chargers or the Broncos, the Colts are still alive for the playoffs, but they need all of that to happen. The good news for them is they are ahead of the Dolphins and the Bengals on the other tiebreaker, so they are the top 7 and 8 team still remaining. The Giants are the Giants, and they're terrible. 1, 2, 3.
Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add on your boys?
Anthony Richardson is questionable. It's a little concerning, but the defense has been balling. They've gotten 3 interceptions the last 2 weeks. I'm expecting this to be a defensive effort if AR can't play or won't play. I don't know.
I mean, it's funny because if it's Richardson, then you just run the ball 50 times again. If it's Flacco, you just let Flacco throw the ball all over the place.
Yeah.
Either way, you can get stuff on the Giants. So the Cowboys and Eagles are going to play what is a meaningful football game for the Eagles. A win for them clinches the NFC East and the 2 seed. A loss means they have to beat the Giants in Week 18. Here's the kicker, though. They are now going to be without Jalen Hurts. He's out. Kenny Pickett starting. That concussion that Hurts got and looked like he wasn't even going to leave the game for very long against the Commanders now is going to cost him an extra week. He's still in the concussion protocol. And so can the Cowboys, who are now without CeeDee Lamb, and of course Dak Prescott, can they go into Philadelphia and beat Saquon and company?
I really want to believe they can, but
I got a funny feeling about this one, dude.
Uh-oh. You got the Cowboys? Tell me more, Craig. See if you can convince me, because I'm right now I'm set on the Eagles, their rushing attack, and Kenny Pickett, to be honest, Craig, he didn't play horrible last week.
No, but he will make the kind of mistake that he made on the Louvu pick. Like, that's who he is. And I'm not saying that he'll make
that was good. That was
3
a
of
great
them.
play by Louvu.
It was, but like you can't bait other quarterbacks into stuff. Like great quarterbacks don't get baited like that.
Cooper Rush? All right, never mind.
I'm not saying Cooper Rush isn't also, challenged. Here's the thing. The argument for the Cowboys is this. Their defense has played at a really high level the last couple of weeks, and their pass rush is insane right now. Like, it is legitimately the best pass rush in the league since Michael Parsons came back. Their pass rush win rates, their sack rates, all of those things are high level, elite since Micah came back. The Eagles do have a great offensive line, obviously, but it changes when Pickett's back there. So it's basically, can the Cowboys heat up and turn over Kenny Pickett at a rate that's high enough to score whatever they need to outpace whatever Saquon does to them? I'm going to say no. I'm going to take the Eagles. But I'm going to be really mad at myself if I just didn't have the bravery to pick the Cowboys, because they're... And I will say this. If CeeDee Lamb was playing, I'd pick the Cowboys. I think Cooper Rush is good enough to beat Kenny Pickett if he's got CeeDee Lamb, considering I think the Cowboys defense... Like, obviously, the Eagles defense is theoretically great, and I'm trying to also not let what Jayden did to them last week overly cloud my thoughts on them, because they've been not only great, but consistently great week over week over week until last week, and they still turned the ball over 5 times. So I'm going to take the Eagles based off that, but I'm terrified of Kenny Pickett versus Michael Parsons is basically what it comes down to.
I also believe in the Eagles defense. Again, they hadn't given up more than 2 passing touchdowns before last week. I'm leaning on the Eagles defense and their rushing attack.
Yeah, also the Cowboys cannot run the ball, so that seems to be a problem. This line is bizarre to me. The Bucs and the Panthers, if the Bucs win and the Falcons lose, the Bucs are in the driver's seat for the NFC South. Of course, the Falcons, who are they playing? The Washington Commanders. But the line here, Anthony, is Bucs by 8. Carolina played the Bucs to a 3-point game the first time around. Carolina's coming off a win. The Bucs are coming off an embarrassing loss, and defensively, they can't stop anybody. But like, I'm taking Tampa because that line is begging you to take Carolina, and I'm just not going to be the sucker.
Dang. I'm taking the Panthers for the upset, man.
In my heart of hearts, I want to take that.
Todd Bowles tried to do what he usually does in terms of like sending all these crazy blitzes. Bryce Young looked poised last time that he's
been playing great against the blitz.
Yeah,
and
I'm gonna take the Panthers.
The Bucs secondary without Antoine Winfield is just a completely different animal. But this line makes no sense, and so I'm running away from it. Titans and Jags. Again, we might disagree here, but we absolutely 100% do not need to talk about this game. 1, 2, 3, Jags.
Titans.
Ugh. Write down whatever you want. You're just trying to make up games on me. I really, honestly don't care. Dolphins and Browns. Dolphins are favored by 3.5. The news for the Browns is they've restructured Deshaun Watson's contract so that pretty much guarantees he's going to be on the team next year, but lightens the cap hits in future years after he's probably gone. Why they would do anything other than just try to move on from him, I do not know. They're an embarrassing organization. Dolphins.
I'm going with the Dolphins, too.
All right, the one game that we actually should talk about, Packers and Vikings. Minnesota's favored by 1.5 at home. This game is for the Vikings to stay alive for the 1 seed. They would then control their own destiny because they face Detroit in Week 18. Packers, if they win, they lock up the 5, or actually, I shouldn't say they lock up the 5 seed. They control their own destiny for the 6 seed, I should say. Obviously, Detroit, Minnesota, whichever one is not the 1 seed will be the 5 seed. But the 6 seed, currently Green Bay, if they lose and the Commanders win out, then Washington becomes the 6 seed and plays at LA or Seattle, whoever wins the West, as the 3 seed. The defenses here have been playing really, really well. The offenses are rolling. This is game of the year type material here. 4:25 on Fox on Sunday. Who you got in this one?
So, divisional game. I think the Vikings won the first matchup, but that was also in part because Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions. He's played flawless. Well, not flawless, but he's played much better in the latter part of the season. I think he's going to take care of the ball. I'm going with the Packers to even up the series. They're going to go 1-1. The Vikings aren't going for the sweep.
I agree with this. The Vikings have some issues at corner right now. And while the Packers also have some issues at receiver, they have like 5 receivers that are all kind of different versions of the same level guy. And so it's not like if the Vikings were without JJ and you're like, oh, that's fundamentally different. I think they can survive without some of their top guys. The Vikings are legitimately good. I'm just going to take the Packers because the Vikings 13-2 good. I don't know. They have a lot to play for though. That building is going to be on fire. I've told people this before. One of the absolute best buildings that I ever traveled to was game at Minnesota. It's one of my favorite buildings in the NFL. That place is going to be on fire at 4:25 on Sunday. All right, Falcons Commanders will pick before the end of the show. Last game, Monday Night Football, Lions and 49ers. Detroit's only a 3.5-point favorite at San Francisco. I think they are going to blow the doors off the Niners because they are still pissed about the NFC Championship game last year. So I will take Detroit.
Yeah, I'm taking the Lions as well. Yep.
All right, that is our trip around the NFL, your injuries, your news, your notes, your picks. When we get back, speaking of picks, pick 6 time. Who are the 6 most important players to Commanders-Falcons on Sunday outside of your 2-star rookie quarterbacks? We'll tell you next on The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. show. We're always live on the free Odyssey app, on the Team 980, on YouTube as well, at the Team 980. Coming up at 6:30, our NFL tiers. Last time here, or I guess last chance to do them here in Week 17, although technically we're already in Week 18 for some teams, but with the Christmas holiday and other things going on, we didn't have a chance to do it. So we'll hit our NFL tiers coming up at 6:30. Right now, though, it is time for our Pick 6. And, well, Anthony, magic button, please.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, Anthony, 6 players that are going to have the biggest impact on Commanders versus Falcons that are not the quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are off limits for this game. And we also try to, unless it's outsized importance, stay away from star players because, well, it's boring radio. Sometimes, though, we do get into some of the stars because they have a humongous importance in the outcome of the game, more than just an average week. And I do think there will be at least one of those that come up. Anthony, to get started, though, are you first this week or am I?
I'm first this week.
Okay. Anthony, you have number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1, Craig, I'm going with B-Rob. Which one do you ask, though? Brian Robinson or B. John Robinson? How about both, Craig? How about both?
I actually thought about doing a bit like this. You want to know what? I'm here for it. I'm going to give you both B-Robs. You talk about Brian first, and then we'll get there.
All right, that's a bet. B-Rob, definitely expecting him to bounce back again. I think everybody's been talking about the Commanders' rushing offense. The last 2 weeks have just been like super underwhelming. B-Rob himself, 10 rushes, 24 yards last week, and 2 forced fumbles. I'm expecting this guy to definitely bounce back. That is very not, used to like what he is when it comes to like his productivity.
First 2 fumbles he's lost all year.
Bounce back.
First 2 fumbles he's had all year, nevertheless lost.
Exactly. And then also just not even just B-Rob himself, just the offensive line. We want to be able to, win the battle of the trenches. Granted, we did go against some, formidable fronts in the Eagles last week, but I think this is a good week to actually go out there and, regain what we used to do and sort of kind of our identity, being able to dominate the trenches and run the ball.
I think one thing that was made abundantly clear this week, and I always love when you hear multiple people say it, and Dan said it on Tuesday, Cliff said it yesterday, that they are trying to avoid the analysis by paralysis that they've had in the run game. Let's not worry about, do we have it exactly targeted right? Oh, this, that. Just get off the ball and hit someone. And you can make up for some mistakes that way because you can create extra commotion in a good way. You can move the line of scrimmage, and if you're not perfectly targeted getting to the linebacker, okay, well, if the defensive tackle's in his lap, he doesn't have anywhere to go. And so, yes, if you mistarget a run and you then let a guy free, even if you dominate the block you do get, that's a problem. So I'm not saying that like targeting runs isn't important, and I think runs get messed up in the NFL a lot because of mental mistakes. But blocking the right guy ineffectively is also a problem. And that's kind of been the issue is, yeah, sure, they've targeted some things right and whatever. And they've been trying to make sure that they're super communicated. And that, I think, goes to also Cliff as a play caller and Anthony Lynn as a run game coordinator to say, hey, we got to just make sure we call the runs that we're most comfortable with. Let's own the GT, guard tackle pull play that has absolutely been our best run this year. Let's run some basic like duo where we just get 2 double teams in the middle line of scrimmage and we fly off the ball and we just hammer a pretty light Falcons front. I think that's definitely a great formula for success this week. On the Bijan Robinson side of it, I've mentioned this stat a couple times this week here on the radio show, and I mentioned it on Take Command as well. So apologies if you're hearing it for the umpteenth time, but it is a pretty wild stat. Bijan Robinson has forced 99 missed tackles this year. And for context, that is the most in the NFL. For more context, that is the 4th most for any running back through 16 games since 2018. So he is having an elite missed tackle season. Now, the Washington Commanders are the 5th best tackle team in the league in terms of missed tackle rate. So they've been very good in this department. And because of how explosive he is, and because they want to be able to be effective off play action, and, if all of a sudden they're behind and their running game isn't getting anywhere and they're in 3rd and long and they just have to drop back with a rookie quarterback, they're not going to be running their play action stuff. Making sure that you contain Bijan, you hit him, not necessarily every time because that's unreasonable, but with some frequency behind the line of scrimmage is super important this week. You need to stuff runs. You need to make them live in 2nd and 3rd and long. And again, is that a good formula against every team? Sure. Is it more important against this team that doesn't want to live in drop back pass versus a team like the Bengals where Joe Burrow's like, whatever, it's 3rd and 8, I'll figure it out? Yes. Rookie quarterback, 2nd game. Don't give him his best friend. That's the running game. Bijan Robinson control, super important. And Brian Robinson, extending drives and making sure that the Commanders' offense is on the field a lot, controls time of possession, is actually a factor in controlling Bijan as well.
Number 2.
Luke! I think this is the week, Anthony. And I called this before De'Ami Brown was going to be out. I said on Take Command earlier in the week, I think we get a Luke McCaffrey touchdown on a screen this week. High red zone, like an 18-yard touchdown on a screen. The Falcons defense has actually given up a ton on screen passes this year. I was watching their touchdowns earlier this year, and it's like screen, 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 especially in the red zone, where in the same area of the field where Cliff loves to call them. And so they play a lot of man coverage in certain situations, and like that goes well towards screen. They're actually one of the highest zone teams in the league, but like they're on some level predictable, and teams have gotten them on screens in the red zone. And with no De'Ami Brown and what Luke gave them on kickoff last week, I think there were already probably a couple of Luke screens in the game plan this week. I now think we see them. I'm going to make a bold prediction that I get to toot my horn about if I'm right and never talk about again if I'm wrong, that he's going to score a touchdown on a screen. So Luke McCaffrey, 18-yard touchdown screen in the high red zone this week. It's coming. Luke McCaffrey, huge factor. But it's beyond that. Like the screen thing is a fun little factoid and like a more in-depth piece of analysis having watched the Falcons on tape. But like De'Ami was their number 2 receiver after Noah Brown went out. And so you now need Luke to play well enough that if they're going to double up on Terry, that he wins one-on-one. And again, they play a ton of zone, so it's on Luke to just make sure he's in timing of the routes, and that involves some precision that I don't know is in his game yet as a rookie. But he's going to have to matter in this game. I also will say KJ Osborne as a zone receiver is something I'm comfortable with. If he needs to beat man-to-man, he's not super dynamic. I don't love that, but he is smart enough and savvy enough and experienced enough to sit down in some zone coverages and just be available. So I think this is a big Zach Ertz week. I think this is obviously always a big Terry week, especially without De'Ami. And now he's got to be the only guy that can get over the top. But if say Luke can get over the top, or you can find some explosives in other ways, that makes the De'Ami Brown absence a lot less painful. Even though I think that because Noah's also out, like De'Ami hurts way more than he should.
Do you think we also see Luke in the return game still?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think you get him there. I think you see some Jameson, you see some of OZ and the receiver reps trying to replace De'Ami as well. But they're not big guys. Like, you need some size and a guy who can run a comeback and, like, run some of the big boy routes. And Luke has the size. So I'm curious to see. They also signed a guy off the practice squad yesterday. I don't know anything about him, but, like, I would not be surprised if he winds up getting called up. Or, like, does Bryson Tremaine get called up from the practice squad? So that's something to keep an eye on tomorrow as well.
Number 3.
All right, Anthony, number 3 on you.
Number 3, I'm going to go with Benjamin St. Juste / Michael Davis. Earlier today, DQ was asked about whether or not Marshawn Lattimore will play, and we got the injury status and updates around 4, and Marshawn's going to be out. So this is what DQ had to say on the Lattimore injury front.
With Lattimore, in terms of injury, is it just a reoccurrence of what he was already dealing with?
Yes.
Okay. As far as this game goes, if he's not available to go. Obviously, Benjamin St-Juste had been playing a lot previously. It's likely that he would be the one out there, and especially going up against a guy like Drake London.
Well, it'll be a mix of people for sure. If we go that way, Mike Davis as well, be somebody that would work into that spot or has been working into that spot this week. Both Ben and Mike took some reps into that spot.
Yeah, so I'm expecting those guys to go out there and split reps. We saw this early on in the season when Benjamin was struggling, so it wouldn't surprise me to see those two. But again, they have a tough matchup in Drake London. Do you think we'll primarily see those two on Drake, or do you think we'll see some Mikey on him as well?
Yeah, I think that you're going to see primarily those two because Drake is a big freaking dude.
Physical
and
guy.
like I think Mikey can play some over his size. Think back to the first Eagles game, some of the plays he made against A.J. Brown. Like, he's not lost, but I think there's also a reason that despite some of the penalties and some of the yardage that Lattimore gave up last week, like, he's Marshawn Lattimore, he's their number one guy, whatever. He's a dog, but they weren't like, oh, wherever A.J. lines up, they shadowed A.J. Brown with Marshawn Lattimore. And I think that's what would have happened this week. And well, Mikey's the next guy. He's not someone that's necessarily a shadow guy. I think they look at him and say, hey, we're going to trust you on Darnell Mooney, and we're going to send help the other way. We need you to lock down Darnell Mooney one-on-one. And I think that's probably the right play. I think the size, and he's not like Drake is super physical. He's very quarterback friendly. The first play of the game last week against the Giants, he runs like this square in, like classic, like in your backyard square in. But the way he just like makes the route friendly to Penix, coming back down towards the ball, but still at depth to get the first down. Like, it's really just good receiver stuff. He's super physical, and I'm really, really scared of the penalties for St-Juste and for Davis, frankly, this week. Both of them have had an issue with that. Or if they get physical with London, you have to do it without getting called for holding, without illegal contact. You cannot give them free first downs. And so that is, to me, it's not necessarily that there's going to be busts or blown coverages or, if you get mossed by Drake London, you're not going to be the first, you're not going to be the last. Do not commit dumb penalties. If he catches the ball, tackle him. Just do not give away free yards with the penalties, and that's my big concern. And that, that's a great pick. Those were the next two guys that I had on my list as well. So that means I got to pick someone else for number 4 in our pick 6, and we'll do that next. But first, let's get an update on the latest in the world of women's sports, presented by Wawa. Chicken how you want it at Wawa with customizable crispy or roasted chicken sandwiches. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Our NFL tier is coming in about 10 minutes as we rank every team in the NFL, prime contenders on down to teams that are in a pretty hellish position. We're continuing now with our pick six players that we think will have the biggest impact on Commanders and Falcons outside of the two quarterbacks. The first group of players that we picked, we had the B-Robs at 1. I let Anthony take both Bijan Robinson and Brian Robinson. I took Luke McCaffrey 2. Benjamin St. Juice / Michael Davis, a.k.a. whoever we think is going to be covering Drake London, is number 3, which leads us to
number 4.
I'm going to go with Zach Ertz, Anthony, because we know that without De'Ami Brown and against this offense or this defense for Atlanta, it's going to be a matriculate the ball down the field kind of game. I think that thinking that this Commanders offense is going to be super explosive is just like it's not in the cards. Like it's Terry or bust. You're going to have to find a couple, and maybe Jayden hits Terry on 2 or 3 big ones, and that's enough. Like they're going to have to hit 1, if not 2. But this is going to be a let's hand the ball off, and if they can get some explosive runs, great. If you can get some explosive screens, great. But I think that the Commanders are going to have to wind up converting some third downs in this game, and Zach Ertz is a guy that's really good at that. Caden Ellis, the linebacker for the Atlanta Falcons, is a good player. I actually could have probably picked him. He's a guy that'll line up in a couple different places. He'll rush the passer, and he can make some plays. But I think you're like if he's covering Zach Ertz on a third down, like I like that matchup for Ertz. And they're going to want to play, I think, Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons more as coverage players in zones and trying to lurk and be over the top of Terry, especially, than they are just sticking one of them man-to-man on Zach Ertz. But no matter who it is, whether it's a guy like Ellis, whether it is Simmons, whoever's on him, it's up to Zach to win in these situations because the Falcons, if they're smart, when they go to their man coverage stuff on third downs, are going to double Terry, and Zach is going to be the guy that is probably the next best target. He obviously didn't have a huge impact in the game last week. The game dictated the ball go elsewhere, but this could be even at 7 catches for 56 yards, but if 5 of the 7 catches are third down conversions for first downs, great, excellent, perfect game for Zach Ertz. A guy like Jamison Crowder probably becomes really important as well, but I'm going to go Zach Ertz at number 4.
Number 5.
Number 5, Mr. Craig Hoffman. I'm going to go with Jeremy Chin.
Okay.
In part to him just being, I think he's had quiet outings the last 4 games or so. I know going back to the Eagles game, the Steelers game, he had a stretch of games where he was a tackling machine. He was, around the ball so often. And I think this is a game where he'll have that opportunity, being as though they lean on Bijan Robinson for a lot of their success. And then I think also when it comes to guarding Kyle Pitts, even though he hasn't really had all that good of a season,
because he's not that good of a player. He's
still a threat though. His athleticism 100%. Is still scary.
He can still run really fast, and if he decides to catch the ball instead of bat it into the hands of an opposing safety, then that's still dangerous.
Yeah, I just feel as though this is a game Jeremy Chin can have his imprint all over, whether it is in the run game but also in the passing game if they opt to go to a guy like Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I think that's smart. Another guy that's out in this game is Jordan McGee. And I know, why would Jordan McGee and Jeremy Chin be relevant? I think sometimes they make choices based off personnel. Are we going to go to our base, which they've done a little bit more the last couple of weeks as McGee has been healthy, and they'll have 7 guys up front, 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and a true base. But a lot of times this year against whether it's a team that plays a fullback, which Atlanta does sometimes, or multiple tight ends, heavier personnel groupings, the Commanders' response is to pull Chin down in the box and have 3 safeties on the field. So whether that's Percy Butler, Derek Forrest, joining Quan Martin, and Shin, I think they go back to that in a heavier dosage without McGee, because it's that or they play Michael Walker more. And Walker's fine, but I think they feel more comfortable with the extra speed on the field. And so a guy like Shin becomes really, really important. And you also have to be a sure tackler. And we haven't talked about John Allen yet, and I'm not going to make him my number 6. So, one of the things when Allen was in earlier in the season is he likes to try to penetrate. And against an outside zone team like the Atlanta Falcons, you can get yourself in trouble if you over-penetrate, and some of those big holes start to open up. So if Chin can lock that down, then obviously it's not as big of a problem. But I think the speed, like you mentioned, covering Bijan in the pass game, like that's important. Covering Pitts, that's important. But as a run support player, to stay in light personnel, stay in the kind of the personnel that they want to be in, where they've played the most snaps this year, where they communicate their best, where all of that stuff is true. You get that with Shin on the field, and I think that you're looking at the best possible version of this Commanders defense. So I definitely don't dislike that pick at all.
Number 6.
Last but not least, I'm going to go with Dante Fowler Jr. Dante obviously is had a, I don't want to say career year, but like arguably a career year as a pass rusher. And I think he's also at times been really impactful with some of these tackles for losses in the run game. And the way he does that, I think, is a little bit risky, and it's going to take some real precision against this Atlanta Falcons team. So what he often does is if he's to the same side as the running back, so let's say he is on the right side of or he's on the offensive right? So the defensive left, offensive right, and the running back is to the offensive right as well on the same side. He's going to guess that handoff is going to go to the left. And if he gets pinned inside, it doesn't really matter because he's now chasing the back. Or on some of the straight ahead zone stuff, like he's getting penetration in the backfield, and a tight end that's trying to block him, like he's lining up instead of as a 6 technique, or as a 6 technique, head up on the tight end, or he's even like pushing towards 5, where he's on the inside shoulder of the tight end. Tight end, like he's already set, he can't move, and he's just got to try to dive inside. Well, if all of a sudden the Falcons try to like toss to the right or something like that, and Fowler gets pinned inside and Bijan gets on the edge, well, now you're in trouble. Also, you have to be really disciplined against outside zone in a way that you don't necessarily have to be quite as disciplined against a pin pull, for instance, or a gap scheme type of run, because the back is always looking for the cutback. Rarely does outside zone actually get out to the front side. So basically, the easiest way to describe outside zone, this is the way they actually taught it, like Kyle Shanahan used to teach it, and Mike Shanahan in 2012, was they would just run teams to the sideline and basically be like, hey, if you want to just keep running with us as blockers, that's fine. We'll run you all out of bounds, and then our back has the entire cutback to the open field. So you're not necessarily even trying as one of the blockers out on the front side to create a hole on the front side. You're just trying to push guys out of the way and to make a cutback lane, and then hope that someone over pursues, and now you got bang Bijan Robinson up the field. And so, long story short, if you are an edge to the front side, not jumping and setting a hard edge and being like, no, I'm not letting you to the outside. That is the key to stopping outside zone. And Fowler, as the lightest of their regular rotation outside guys compared to Dorrance Armstrong or Cleveland Ferrell, like, how do you do that? Do you use your speed? Can you dart inside and still get up the field vertical enough to cut off that edge in a way that doesn't allow for a cutback? Or can you actually set a hard, violent edge even though you're a lighter, more pass rush body type? And then 2, if you're on the backside and you're jumping and trying to pursue, can you do it without over pursuing, where you get washed out of your gap, and now all of a sudden there's a huge cutback lane on the backside C gap, and Bijan Robinson gets out. So this applies really to Dorrance Armstrong and Cleveland Ferrell and Javonte Jean-Baptiste. I wonder if, like, John Allen, as he returns back, do they put him on the edge a little bit in certain situations? Like, I'm not anti that. And they've messed around with some different alignments this year situationally. So whoever is on the edge, you have to set a great edge against outside zone teams. Fowler, the way he plays the run sometimes is definitely risky, but he also is a guy that I think has been pretty good at guessing right on that stuff. The problem is, if you guess wrong one time against Bijan, he can make a house call. That's our pick 6 at 6. We'll see how we did on Mondays. We look back at the game through the eyes of these 6, well, in this case, like 9 players, because we doubled up a couple places. But when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, a quick look at our NFL tiers going into the penultimate weekend of the NFL. Then we wrap things up with our game pick and real things real people said into real microphones. is the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. A quick run through of our NFL tiers as we need to make a few updates ahead of week 18, well, really week 17, although I guess we're kind of almost halfway through it. 3 games already in the books. It'll be 6 that are in the book by the time that we get to we get to Sunday, and then almost all of them will be in the books by the time the Commanders actually take the field on Sunday night. So let's get to it. Our prime contenders. I do believe we're going to need to make some changes here, Anthony. The Kansas City Chiefs have actually, I think, solidified their spot atop the AFC. I mean, one, they have legitimately done that on a practical sense. They are the AFC's number 1 seed, but also their offense suddenly looks better than it has the entire season, and their defense is rounding into form as well, and they didn't even have Chris Jones when they just dismantled the Steelers the other day on Christmas.
Yeah, they look scary. Very scary, actually.
Yeah. The Ravens, I think, have reminded folks exactly who they are. Mid-season lull, okay. Mm-hmm. Are they still liable to do something incredibly stupid on any given weekend? Yes. But them, if I could guarantee you that every single team in the league was going to play their A game, would you pick any other team over the Ravens? I don't know that you would. Like the Lions, you'd have to say, with what they can do offensively, are pretty close. The Chiefs are certainly there. The Bills are certainly there because Josh Allen's A game seems to be as good as anybody's A game. But the Ravens are absolutely right there at the top of the list in terms of, we're going to get the best of their defense. Marlon Humphrey's making plays. Hamilton's making plays. Roquan's making plays. And Lamar's going to play at that level. I don't want to face them at all.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
I would say they're the scariest team when they're clicking on all cylinders.
Bill Barnwell had one of the best tweets of the year the other day, or best post of the year the other day. He goes, every time I watch Lamar Jackson play, I think is the MVP. Every time I watch Josh Allen play, I think is the MVP.
That's actually hilarious.
I'm kind of just at this point, just give them co-MVPs. Like I'm fine with it. Both of them deserve it. Speaking of Bills, I think they're locked in to their spot in the prime contenders. Lions, despite the injuries, are still playing well. They're 13-2, and are in a dogfight with the Minnesota Vikings for the 1 seed in the NFC. So both those teams stay. I think the Packers are perfectly fine where they are. I think they're starting to really pick things up. They'd probably have an even better record if Jordan Love had started the season healthy, but he didn't. And those games count in the standings, but when we talk about who we take seriously this time of year, I think the Packers are right there. The Eagles, are we really going to change anything after 1 week where they were rolling early and Jalen Hurts gets out? Okay, good. Didn't think so. No. Anthony with a vigorous shake of his head, no. And then there's the team that we are going to take out. Pittsburgh Steelers. It was nice knowing you. You are not good enough. You do not belong in this tier of teams. And it was really cute that you pretended for a while, and they're just not on that level. Offensively, like Russ is not elite. He's dangerous. Wow. Pickens makes his plays, but he's unreliable. And defensively, they're just a tier below elite. And that combination is not good enough to be a prime contender when you have the quality that we just talked about with those other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams.
Yeah, I think the defense also just took a step back due to the injury to Joey Porter Jr.
Although he's had his moments this year, so
yeah,
including against Terry.
You need your front to dominate, and they lately have not been dominating. Not to say T.J. Watt isn't having a good season, but collectively they have not had the impact.
Higbee going out, like they lost a little bit of depth there, and that certainly hurt them. Watt's been in and out of the lineup and not at 100%, so they're just not there. All right, puncher's chance. The Commanders, I think that's where they belong. They proved you give them a shot, they can go beat a good team. Haven't been able to say that with definitiveness, just as a theory. Now they've done it because they beat the Eagles. Chargers, we had an asterisk by them. They needed to bounce back. They did. I think they're good. Broncos, they're good. Seahawks, man. I guess.
Exactly. That's the exact sentiment I get. That's what they get.
I guess.
And I guess.
Look, I think at this point, if you're basically alive for the playoffs, with some control over your own destiny, although the Seahawks are very minimal, I would be willing to move them down to interesting but not good enough, to be honest.
After that performance yesterday, I totally understand it. But again, Craig, they still have a chance.
All right. Rams, they're definitely puncher's chance. The Bucks. What they did last week. Yikes, man. But, like, I still think if they can get Winfield back defensively with what their offense is capable of, they can throw a haymaker in the playoffs. Like, puncher's chance is, can you win a playoff game? And I think the answer is yes.
I still say we put an asterisk next to them just because Baker Mayfield, the offense wasn't clicking against a Dallas defense that did play better last week, but still they had proven that they can be had. Yeah, I will put an asterisk next to them.
Okay, Tampa gets an asterisk.
They gotta go out there and beat the Panthers.
They do. The Texans, we left a note that they are reluctantly in puncher's chance because they already won a poop division, and thus they are in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I still want to move them down. Like, they are a nightmare, man. And their defense their defense had been one of the best in the league, and the Chiefs just dismantled them. Now, that's also, I think, here's what I'll say. 4 days rest coming off of 2 of the toughest games they'll have all year. Christmas, it's on a Wednesday, the whole deal. I'm at Lamar's doing Lamar stuff. Because they already clinched, because they're in a terrible division, congrats the Texans, you get to stay. All right, interesting but not good enough. The Falcons, the Bengals, 49ers, and Cardinals. I think Cardinals and 49ers, you have to go down to no chance because you've formally been eliminated. That's how the rules work.
Yeah. Now, these other 2 teams, though, Craig,
that technically, I guess, need to come back up.
Well, the Falcons do. I don't know about the Bengals.
Bengals are still interesting. Joe Burrow's...
No, I'm talking about into puncher's chance.
Oh.
Well, maybe we put a carrot next to the Falcons because if they win...
I mean, the Falcons control their own destiny. I don't think that... I'll put it this way. If I was a team that was going on the road somewhere to play a playoff game, I would be hoping it's Atlanta, not Tampa.
Man, what?
So I'm going to say, yeah, Falcons stay there. Interesting, but not quite good enough. The Bengals are interesting because Jamar Chase is chasing the Triple Crown. So, like, yeah, they're interesting. All right, based off of the Colts and Dolphins still being alive technically, do we go ahead and move them up to interesting but not quite good enough, knowing that they're very likely to just be moved back down next week? Are they just in no chance?
I think we might as well just put a carrot next to them.
If they're still alive going into week 18?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's fair. Because honestly, like, they're not even, I don't find either team particularly interesting. I mean, the Colts are kind of interesting just because I want to see what they do with Richardson, but if he doesn't even play, like, I don't care what happens with them. All due respect. I personally care about Zaire because he's a friend of the show and he's your friend, but, like, I don't, as a team, like, whatever. All right, so that means no chance. Panthers, Patriots, Saints, Cowboys, Colts, Dolphins, Cardinals, 49ers. Teams in actual hell. Jets, Giants, Titans, Raiders, Jags, Browns, Bears. I actually think that all stays. None of those teams are escaping actual hell, even though the Jets, I think, won.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're just until next season. You got your quarterback going on McAfee's show joking about being fired by the owner's 16-year-old son. By the way, the owner who's 78. I'll let y'all do the math there. That's our tier rankings. We'll do one more next week, and then we'll be into the playoffs. So we'll see what I think we'll probably hopefully have a chance to do them on Tuesday next week, as we typically do, although we are off Wednesday for New Year's Day, so things will be moving around a little bit here on the show. When we get back, we wrap things up with real things real people said into real microphones, and we give you our game pick for Commanders and Falcons. What are they doing, Anthony?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the weekend.
That was very toe in the water on the singing there.
Ooh,
You couldn't decide whether you were going to go for it or not.
Nah, I already know my limitations when it comes to singing, so I tried
that you shouldn't sing.
Yeah,
well
much.
established on the show. All right, wrapping up here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show, and it's time now to make our pick for Commanders and Falcons. Anthony, have we continued? I know we were doing this early in the year. Have we tracked our record with picks on the Commanders this year? How are we doing on the Commanders?
Okay, I haven't tallied them, but I have kept track of when we've, I guess, voted for
picks.
When we've gotten the game correct. Anyway.
Yes.
So last week we both got it wrong because we both chose the Eagles.
Hooray.
Week 15.
Love that.
Commanders. 14. Commanders. I don't know. I will have to tally it, to be honest.
Okay. Does it look like there's more W's or L's on your screen?
More W's, actually.
Okay. Good. Excellent.
All
right.
We both chose the Ravens. We both chose the Eagles the first time we played. And I think we both chose the Steelers as... Actually, no. When we played the Steelers, you chose the Commanders. I chose the Steelers.
Oh, okay. So are you beating me then?
But for the most part, we've guessed. We predicted the game correctly.
Okay. Well, let's try to do that again, and hopefully it's with the home team winning. Sunday Night Football for the first time since they played the Giants a couple years ago. Of course, the Commanders hosting the Falcons. This game flexed into Sunday Night Football. There is a chance, depending on what happens in some other games, that Washington has already clinched a playoff berth by the time this game kicks off. However, if they have not gotten the help, a win and the Commanders are returning to the playoffs for the first time since 2020. They are 4.5-point favorites as we stand right now. Their weather could be a factor in this game. As I pat myself down for my phone. Let's see what the forecast says right now. Anthony, on Sunday, we have an 85% chance of rain in D.C., and it is currently scheduled to be raining not just at kickoff, but through the game. This has been changing all day because or it was supposed to be raining in the morning, then stopping in the middle of the day, then kicking back off, and then dry at kickoff. It's moving all over the place. So TBD whether it's actually raining. But either way, we got to make the pick now. The time has come. Who you got?
I think I'm going to go with the Commanders. I think the conditions are very concerning, especially for our pass catchers. I don't think we have guys that are natural, catchers or just catchers with their hands anyway. So I think it's going to be tough just to catch the ball if it's rainy conditions. So that means we'll have to lean on the running attack. And I think we can dominate the trenches here, like offensively and defensively. So I'm going to go with the Commanders. I don't think Michael Penix is going to have all that big of an evening, especially with the weather conditions. Give me the Commanders. +7. -7, sorry. -7.
Why are you saying minus? Is it you're just picking a random number? The number's 4.5.
Yeah.
So you're saying they're going to cover the 4.5. Normally, most people, when they pick games, the way we've done it the entire year is you say a score, Anthony.
I don't necessarily have – it's too hard because I feel like – I looked at the total. I feel like
it's 47.5, right?
Yeah.
It's a big number, especially in the rain.
Exactly. So, I mean, if I had to give a score, I would probably go 23-10. 23-10.
Oh, wow. You're talking
I
about
think it's low.
Dominant performance. It's only a 33. So Anthony's saying bet the under with all your life.
23-10.
I'm going to go higher on the score here. I'm going to go 28-21 Washington. Another thing to watch for the fun storyline in this game, the kickers. Hopefully not too fun of a storyline, but do you know who's kicking for Atlanta?
Is it not Young Waiku?
No, he's on IR. It's Riley Patterson, former Commander.
Get out of here.
Has made his way all the way back to Northwest Stadium, where he was very bad in week 1. Or I guess it wasn't that was in Tampa, but like they had the kicking issues with him earlier in the season. So he's one of the 8 that has been through here, but he is now kicking for Atlanta. So in the rain, does that become an issue? I think you're right though. I think the Commanders can just dominate the trenches here. Like I think that Washington will be able to blow Atlanta off the ball. They're entering the game with that mindset. Defensively, I think that they can try to, take some of the things they did really well. And especially, look, if the weather's crappy, look, Penix's arm is live. That dude can spin it through anything. But, if the weather's not really great for passing conditions, it's hard to anticipate cuts, like all that kind of stuff. I do think that the lack of reps that he has with his top guys could become a factor. Ball sitting off guys' hands. Like, can you get some picks? Like, can you take advantage of inevitable mistakes? And with that, like, I want to force you to throw it. And so let's bring an extra safety down in the box and like let's play with a little bit heavier personnel. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Washington can do. I think this could be a really fun night at Northwest Stadium. If all of a sudden the rain holds off, we're still looking for places to tailgate. So shoot us a DM on Instagram at Hoffman.sports or email us hoffmanshow.com. Use the contact page. Anthony, do we have time for real things or have I once again talked too much?
We got 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Let's hit a real things on the way out of here. Maybe.
Real things.
We're not going to suck this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
Anthony, go.
All right, we got a couple quick ones. The first one, Joe Burrow actually played a prank on Jamar Chase right before the game started on Sunday.
Zach said he wants you to talk. So we taking a ball?
I got it.
Oh, thank God. That was a real move right there. Classic.
That is Joe Burrow telling Jamar Chase he's going to have to talk in the coin toss. I feel like Joe in that situation was the kind of prank that I would play on you, and Jamar Chase reacted as you would react.
Yeah,
Anthony, you're going to drive the show today. What? Huh? No, I'm just kidding. I got it. Here, I'm going to drive the show. We're parking, and the show's over. See you Sunday.